What if forgetting someone's name is a sign that you rude or scatterbrained, but a message from the deepest part of your mind? According to Jung, even the tiny things we accidentally forget can reveal hidden truths about who we are. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you might never think about forgetting names the same way again. Let's begin with a simple scene you probably know all too well. You meet someone at a party, they tell you their name, you repeat it, you even think you've locked it in. 2 minutes later, someone asks, "Hey, what was their name again?" And your mind goes completely blank. You might laugh it off with, "Sorry, I'm just terrible with names." But what if that explanation is way too shallow? Jung believed that the human mind is not random. For him, even small mistakes, slips of the tongue, misread words, forgotten appointments, and yes, even forgotten names, can sometimes be meaningful. They're not always dramatic, but they can be subtle signals from the unconscious, showing us what we are really paying attention to and what we are quietly avoiding. Before we go deeper, let's be clear. We're not talking about serious medical memory problems. We are talking about everyday patterns, people who are otherwise functioning just fine, but who constantly notice, "I can remember faces, stories, even conversations, but names just don't stick." That pattern itself is psychologically interesting. Modern psychology says memory is heavily shaped by attention and emotional relevance. We remember what the mind decides is important, what connects to what we already care about. Jung would completely agree with that, but he'd go one step further. He'd say that what we find important and worth remembering isn't chosen only by our conscious mind. It's also chosen by deeper, unconscious layers of the psyche. To understand this, we need a very quick map of Jung's view of the mind. At the center, you have the ego, your conscious I, the part that says, "I'm bad with names," or "I'm trying my best." Below that is the personal unconscious, all the things you've experienced but forgotten, repressed, or simply not aware of in the moment. Deeper still is the collective unconscious, a kind of shared psychological layer full of universal patterns and archetypes. But for our topic, one concept is especially important: complexes. A complex, in Jung's language, is like a cluster of emotionally charged ideas centered around something important. Your mother, your father, your sense of failure, your need to be liked, your fear of authority, your shame, your ambition. These complexes live in the unconscious, but they influence how you feel, what you notice, and what you forget. Jung actually studied this using something called the word association test. He would say a neutral word, like father or money, and time how fast people responded with the first word that came into their head. If someone hesitated, stumbled, forgot the word, or reacted oddly to certain triggers, that suggested a complex. In other words, when we hesitate, blank out, or forget around particular topics, it's often because something deeper is being stirred. So let's bring this back to names. When you meet someone, a few things happen at once. One part of your mind registers the face, the body language, the tone of voice. Another part hears the name, an arbitrary label, at least at first. Then the unconscious starts silently scanning. Does this person remind me of anyone? Do they feel safe or threatening? Are they attractive? Are they important to my goals? Are they connected to any of my complexes? If your unconscious decides, this person is emotionally important, you're far more likely to remember not just their face, but also their name, because the name is now a symbol, a tag, attached to emotional meaning. If there's no emotional connection, or if there is emotional conflict, the name becomes one of the easiest pieces of information to drop. That already hints at why some people feel good with faces, bad with names. Faces are rich with emotional information, micro-expressions, mood, familiarity. Names, especially when you first hear them, are just sounds. The psyche has to want to keep them. But now we get to something even more interesting. Not everyone's mind is organized in the same way. Jung devoted a huge part of his work to understanding psychological types, the different ways people naturally pay attention, think, and feel. Some types are almost destined to struggle with details like names, while excelling in other, less obvious ways. In the next segment, we'll look at Jung's personality types and how they quietly shape whether names stick in your mind, or slip away almost instantly. Jung is one of the main sources behind what later became the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator, but his original idea was simpler and deeper. He talked about 2 basic attitudes, introversion and extroversion, and 4 main functions of the mind: thinking, feeling, sensation, and intuition. Each of us has a preferred attitude and a dominant function that colors how we meet the world. Why does this matter for remembering names? Because names are just one kind of information among many. Your type influences which information your psyche considers most important in those crucial first moments of meeting someone. Let's briefly unpack Jung's 4 functions in everyday language. Sensation focuses on concrete facts and details, what is actually there. These people notice colors, sounds, smells, exact words, and specific data. Thinking focuses on logic, categories, and structure, how things fit into systems or rules. Feeling, for Jung, is not just emotion. It's a way of valuing, of deciding whether something is good or bad, important or unimportant, based on subjective but consistent criteria. Intuition focuses on patterns, possibilities, meanings behind the surface, what things could be, not just what they are. Now imagine you meet someone new, and they say, "Hi, I'm Sarah." A person with a dominant sensation function might unconsciously lock in the exact sound of the name, the color of her shirt, the way her hand felt in a handshake. Details stick more easily because that is how their psyche relates to the world, through concrete impressions. For them, remembering names might be a bit easier, if they care at all. A dominant intuitive type, on the other hand, might register something else entirely. They might immediately sense a vibe from Sarah. She feels ambitious, or she reminds me of someone who's burned out, or something about her energy feels familiar. Instead of grabbing onto the name, their mind jumps to the invisible pattern, story, or possibility that Sarah represents. The name is less important than this inner picture. If you're an intuitive type, especially a strong one, this may sound familiar. You remember stories, life goals, and subtle energies far more easily than you remember the basic label, the name. What about thinking and feeling types? A dominant thinking type, especially one who enjoys categorizing information, might remember names if they can place people into mental boxes. Sarah from marketing, James the lawyer, Emma, the friend of Tom. The name by itself might not be that memorable, but Sarah who argued about the budget is. They bind the name to a role, a function, a narrative. A feeling type, by contrast, is highly tuned into interpersonal harmony, emotional tone, and relational significance. They might remember the people who mattered, the ones they felt a bond with or tension with. If they don't feel much resonance with someone, their psyche may quietly file that person under not important, and the name just dissolves. So when you say, "I'm just bad with names," Jung would encourage you to ask, bad compared to what? You might be bad with names but excellent at reading emotional undercurrents, spotting future possibilities in people, understanding logical structures, noticing physical details of a room. The psyche is not lazy, it's selective. Jung also talked about the persona, the social mask we wear in public. Your persona is the version of you that shows up at work, at a party, at a networking event. Sometimes, people with a very polished persona are so focused on how they appear, saying the right thing, looking confident, being likable, that they have very little attention left for the actual person in front of them. They project an image, receive an image back, exchange names. But the encounter never really touches the deeper self. The name remains floating on the surface, unanchored, and it quickly disappears. So part of being bad with names can simply mean your energy, your type, and your persona are directed somewhere else in those first few seconds of meeting someone. If you're a strong intuitive, your mind is dreaming up patterns. If you're anxious about how you come across, your ego is defending your image. If you're a feeling type, you're sensing whether this relationship will be meaningful. The name is not yet meaningful enough to be kept. But that's only half the story. Because sometimes, you don't just forget names in general. You forget certain people's names over and over again. Your boss, your neighbor, that one colleague who intimidates you, or that one person you're oddly uncomfortable around. That's when Jung would say, now we're re-entering the territory of complexes and the shadow. In the next segment, we'll explore how forgetting names can reveal your hidden emotional tangles, why you blank out around authority figures, attractive strangers, or people who mirror parts of yourself you'd rather not see. Jung's concept of a complex is central to understanding why some name-forgetting episodes feel almost suspicious. It's not that you forget everyone equally. It's that your memory seems to falter in very specific situations, around very specific types of people. Let's recall, a complex is an emotionally charged cluster of memories, feelings, and expectations around a central theme, like mother, father, failure, power, shame, or love. Complexes are not bad by themselves, they're just nodes of intense meaning. But when a complex is active, it tends to distort perception, attention, and memory. Jung's word association experiments showed that when a word touched a person's complex, their reactions changed. They paused, repeated the word, forgot it, or responded with something odd. Their conscious mind didn't know why, but the unconscious was clearly stirred. Now imagine names as words in that experiment. You meet your new manager. They introduce themselves. You shake hands. Maybe they remind you, unconsciously, of a strict parent or a teacher who criticized you. Consciously, you might think, nice to meet you, but unconsciously, your authority complex is triggered. Anxiety rises slightly. Your attention narrows. The name is said, but missed. Or you catch it, but it never really lands. Later, someone asks, "What's your manager's name again?" And you know you should remember this. You might even feel a small wave of shame. But Jung would not simply call this carelessness. He'd ask, what does this person represent to you? What complex might be hiding behind this forgetting? Let's take a few examples. Forgetting the names of authority figures. You consistently blank out on the names of your bosses, senior colleagues, or teachers. This could hint at an unresolved relationship with authority, perhaps fear of judgment, resentment, or a deep desire to rebel that you don't fully own. Forgetting their name symbolically reduces their power. It's as if your psyche refuses to fully register them as a solid, named presence in your inner world. Forgetting the names of people who attract you. You meet someone you're strongly drawn to, maybe romantically, and you almost immediately forget their name. One might expect attraction to make memory sharper, but anxiety can do the opposite. Your love or sexuality complex may be triggered. Fears of rejection, shame, past heartbreak. The ego gets overwhelmed, and the name, being a fragile detail, is the first to go. Forgetting the names of people who irritate or threaten you. Perhaps there's a coworker you quietly resent or feel competitive with. You mix up their name, call them by the wrong name, or constantly ask, "Sorry, what was it again?" It's as if a part of you refuses to grant them full identity, to acknowledge their presence in your personal landscape. This can relate to complexes around competition, sibling rivalry, or status. Then there is the shadow, another key Jungian concept. The shadow is made up of qualities you disown in yourself, traits you judge, fear, or deny. If you see yourself as gentle, you might reject your aggression. If you see yourself as rational, you might reject your vulnerability or your creativity. Those rejected parts don't disappear. They slip into the unconscious and often appear outside of you, projected onto others. Now, think about the kinds of people whose names you're always losing. Maybe you consistently forget the names of very confident people, loud people, seductive people, or deeply emotional people. That pattern could hint that they carry something of your shadow, a trait you haven't yet integrated. Forgetting their name can be a way your psyche avoids fully acknowledging that this trait exists in your world, and potentially in yourself. For example, if you pride yourself on being humble and modest, but secretly envy people who take up space, you might find it strangely hard to remember the names of bold, showy personalities. They are uncomfortable mirrors. The name is a symbol of recognizing them as a unique, valid person. Your shadow might prefer to keep them a bit blurred, unnamed, unacknowledged. Jung would not say that every forgotten name is a major psychological event. Sometimes you're just tired or distracted. But he would strongly emphasize patterns. If you notice that, you remember some names instantly and forever, and you somehow always forget certain others, and this repeats over time, then you're not looking at a random failure of memory. You're looking at the map of your emotional world, where the complexes live, where the shadow hides, where the psyche is at peace, and where it is in conflict. Interestingly, the opposite is also true. If you naturally remember specific kinds of names or people very easily, like mentors, charismatic leaders, or those in need of help, that can reveal positive complexes, areas where your energy, passion, and identification are strong. You might attach to rescuer figures, heroic personalities, or vulnerable people because they fit into your personal myth about who you are and what matters. So, when you catch yourself saying, "I never remember his name, I don't know why," a Jungian approach would say, let's find out. Who is he, symbolically, in your inner story? But there's still another layer, the symbolic power of names themselves. Across myth, religion, and folklore, knowing someone's name has always been treated as something powerful, almost magical. Jung believed that myths and symbols reflect deep archetypal truths about the psyche. So forgetting names may not just be about individuals, but about the way we relate to the power of naming itself. That's what we'll explore in the next segment. In many ancient traditions, names were never just labels. To know someone's true name was to have a certain kind of power or intimacy with them. Myths and fairy tales often warn, don't give your true name to strangers, or they'll gain influence over your soul. Think of stories where spirits or demons lose power when their real name is spoken, or where a hero must discover a hidden name to break a spell. Carl Jung saw myths like these not as childish fantasies, but as symbolic expressions of how the human psyche works. And names, in this symbolic light, represent more than convenience. They represent recognition, relationship, and inclusion in your inner world. When you remember someone's name, you are, in a subtle way, acknowledging their personhood. You're saying, you exist for me as a specific individual, not just a vague figure. When you forget, especially repeatedly, it may reflect more than a cognitive slip. It can reflect an inner hesitation to give them that status in your psychic life. Consider 3 possibilities. You don't want this person to matter. Maybe they represent a group or role you distrust, or they trigger jealousy, or they remind you of someone who hurt you. Forgetting their name can be an unconscious refusal to bind them to your story. You're afraid of what that relationship could mean. If you name someone, especially someone you strongly drawn to, you tacitly acknowledging the possibility of deeper involvement. The psyche, wary of emotional risk, may forget as a way of keeping that door only half open. You haven't seen them as a person yet. In a fast-paced social environment, people easily become roles, functions, or background noise. You might know the barista, the guy from IT, or the neighbor upstairs without ever really seeing them. Without that inner recognition, the name has nowhere to land. Now, bring in modern cognitive psychology. Research shows that proper names are among the hardest things for the brain to remember. Unlike common nouns, chair, dog, car, which are tied to categories, and many experiences, a person's name is a mostly arbitrary link between a sound and a unique individual. There is no built-in meaning. Sarah doesn't inherently tell you anything about the person standing in front of you. This aligns perfectly with the Jungian perspective. Without emotional meaning, memory is weak. When you're stressed, anxious, or distracted, your brain saves resources by prioritizing what seems most immediately relevant: tone of voice, emotional threat, social status, expectations. The name, being arbitrary and low on emotional richness at first, often gets dropped. But the unconscious still plays a role in what becomes emotionally relevant. If someone resonates with a complex, stirs a secret hope or fear, fits a pattern you care about, or touches you archetypally, as a mentor, a rival, a potential partner, a wounded child, a wise elder, your mind grants their name more weight. It stops being just a sound and becomes a symbol attached to an inner image. On the flip side, the more your persona is performing, the less your deeper self is engaged. In environments where you feel you have to act a certain way, corporate events, parties where you're trying to impress, social situations where you feel out of place, your attention is split. You monitor yourself. Do I look confident? Am I saying the right thing? Do they like me? This internal commentary hijacks the mental space that would be needed to properly encode details like names. So, again, forgetting names in these contexts is not coincidence in the sense of being meaningless. It reflects the tension between the social mask and the authentic self. The persona is busy managing the performance, while the deeper psyche hasn't really decided that these people, in this setting, truly matter to your inner life. There's also the question of individuation, Jung's term for the lifelong process of becoming more fully yourself, integrating your shadow, making peace with your complexes, and aligning your outer life with your inner truth. As people move further along the path of individuation, they often report a shift in how they relate to others. They become more genuinely curious, more present, more capable of seeing others as full human beings rather than fixed roles. In that sense, names start to matter more. Remembering them becomes part of honoring the unique reality of each person. At the same time, individuated people may also become more selective. They might invest deeply in fewer relationships. In those cases, they may stop pretending to care about every name and instead remember strongly the names of those who truly matter to their journey. So, between Jungian depth psychology and modern memory science, a picture emerges. Names are hard to remember when they're not connected to emotional or symbolic meaning. Your personality type and persona influence what gets that meaning. Complexes and shadow can distort which names stick and which are conveniently forgotten. Forgetting names, especially in patterns, isn't purely random. It's a reflection of how your psyche navigates relationships, power, desire, and fear. The question, then, is, what can you do with this understanding? How can you transform "I'm just bad with names" from a source of embarrassment into a path of self-knowledge? And, if you want, actually improve your memory for names without fighting against your own nature? That's what we'll explore in our final segment. Let's start with a mindset shift that Jung would strongly approve of. Instead of saying, "I'm bad with names," try asking, "What is my mind doing instead when I meet someone?" Because your mind is definitely doing something. Maybe it's scanning for danger, reading emotions, predicting future possibilities, maintaining your persona, or comparing the person to someone from your past. Whatever it's doing is not random. It reflects your type, your complexes, and your stage of individuation. Here's a practical Jungian exercise. For a week or two, keep a small journal or notes app. Whenever you notice yourself forgetting someone's name, or struggling to recall it, write down the situation. Where were you? Party, work, date, class? Who the person was? Boss, colleague, someone attractive, someone intimidating, someone unimportant to you. How you felt in that moment? Anxious, bored, impressed, awkward, resentful? Any associations? Who or what do they remind you of? After a while, you may start to see patterns. I reliably forget the names of people I feel inferior to. I blank out on names at large networking events where I feel like I am faking it. I forget the names of people I'm secretly attracted to, especially when I'm trying to hide it. I remember every name of people I feel I can help, but not those I think are judging me. Now your forgetting is no longer an annoying quirk. It's a map of your inner life. This is classic Jungian work, paying attention to everyday behavior as symbolic, interpreting it in the context of your complexes and shadow, and using it to understand yourself more deeply. Next, once you've started to see some patterns, you can decide, do I actually want to get better at remembering names? Or, more precisely, in which situations do I care? If the answer is yes, here are some ways to improve name memory, without fighting against your natural personality type. For intuitive types, pattern seekers, and big picture thinkers, don't try to force yourself to focus on the raw sound of the name. Instead, connect the name to a story or meaning. If you meet a Daniel who's very ambitious, imagine a short inner story, Daniel the dreamer building his empire. If you meet a Laura who loves travel, picture Laura the explorer with a map in her hand. Your intuition loves stories and possibilities. Use that to anchor the name. For sensation types, detail and fact people lean into your strength. Tie the name to something concrete on the spot. Sarah with the red scarf. Michael with the deep voice. Say the name once in your mind linked to that physical detail. Later, recalling the image will help bring back the name. For feeling types, value and relationship-oriented, your key is emotional significance. Ask a tiny, meaningful question when you meet someone, something that makes them share a piece of themselves. What do you enjoy most about your work, Sarah? James, how did you end up moving here? As you feel a small emotional connection, silently tell yourself, this is Sarah, who loves X. Your values will help fix the name. For thinking types, structure and logic categorize people mentally in a way that feels natural to you. Emma, project manager, client side. Robert, friend of Anna, photographer. If you like systems, build a mental database where each name has a role, a place, or a tag. Regardless of your type, a simple, powerful habit is to use the name a few times early in the conversation, without overdoing it. Nice to meet you, Sarah. So Sarah, how did you hear about this event? Sarah, that's really interesting. This serves two functions. It helps encode the name, and it lets you feel the emotional reaction you have to that person and their name. Does saying their name feel easy, awkward, charged, exciting? That reaction is often a clue to your complexes and shadow. Another powerful move, from a Jungian perspective, is to soften your persona in situations where names matter. If you notice you constantly forget names in professional or status-heavy environments, experiment with dropping the performance a little. Instead of trying to impress everyone, aim to genuinely connect with one or two people. Let your curiosity lead. When your deeper self, not just your social mask, is engaged, names have a better chance of sticking, because the relationship becomes part of your individuation, not just your image. You can also explore your shadow by noticing which types of people you resist remembering. Ask yourself honestly, do I forget the names of people who have traits I secretly envy? Do I dismiss people who seem to embody a way of living I've never allowed myself? Do I avoid fully acknowledging people from backgrounds or groups I unconsciously judge? If you find a pattern like, I never remember the names of loud, confident people. That's an invitation to ask, where is my own loudness and confidence? Have I pushed it into the shadow? Integrating a shadow trait doesn't mean becoming that way overnight. It means admitting that the trait exists inside you as a potential, not just outside in those people. Finally, it's important to bring some compassion into this whole process. Jung stressed again and again that the psyche has its own wisdom. Forgetting names is not a moral failure. It's not proof that you don't care or that you're inferior. It's a sign that your mind is prioritizing some things over others, according to deeper realities inside you. The more you understand those realities, your type, your complexes, your shadow, your persona, the more choice you have. You can decide when to gently train your attention, when to let go of guilt, and when to listen closely to what your forgetting might be trying to tell you. So, the next time you go blank on someone's name, you can still smile and say, "I'm so sorry, I'm terrible with names." But maybe, silently, you'll also add, "And now I'm curious why." Because in Jung's world, even that tiny moment is not a coincidence. It's another doorway into who you really are. Thank you for watching and for spending this time exploring the hidden psychology behind something as simple as forgetting names. If this video helped you see yourself a little more clearly, or change how you think about your own memory, let me know in the comments below. If you'd like to see more deep dive content like this through the lens of Carl Jung and depth psychology, make sure to hit like, share this video with someone who always says they're bad with names, and subscribe to the channel. It really helps the channel grow and lets me keep creating videos like this. Thanks again for being here, and I'll see you in the next one.